Lara, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to share your wisdom, to share your knowledge with my audience.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So let's dive in. Before we get started on the topic, let's share your win and your fail.
Okay. Well, twice a year, I have a challenge where thousands and thousands of women participate in this. It's the Adored Wife Challenge. It's a 5-day challenge. And on the last one, I got ready to do my Facebook Live, which I had practiced going on to Facebook Live, and something had changed. So I couldn't quite figure out how to get onto my live right away. And so I got in a little bit of, I got a little bit rushed, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late. And then I was like, oh, here it is. I figured it out. And I went into the wrong group, and I was doing the Facebook Live for maybe like 10 minutes before I realized like, oh, I'm in the wrong group. And anyway, so I canceled. I think I was about a half hour late to my own challenge that day.
Goodness.
Yeah, thousands of women going, what happened? Where are you? So, and honestly, every single day for that entire week of the challenge, I had some sort of like technical mishap where I would like forget to do the recording, or so I was like, well, good thing people are forgiving. And we actually had a great challenge anyway, but
That's great.
man, what a mere mortal woman, right?
Exactly. That's what we all are.
Yep.
That's what we all are. So thank you for sharing your fail. I'm excited also to share your Empowered Women. What is it? The Empowered Women?
The Empowered Wife book. Oh, that was the Adored Wife Challenge.
Yeah.
The Adored Wife Challenge.
Okay.
You want to be an adored wife? We have 5 days of activities that we do. We only have it twice a year. Coming up in January is the next one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So your win.
Okay. My win is that I have the Empowered Wife podcast, and we just surpassed 1 million downloads for that podcast. I know. I was pretty excited. It's people seem to love it, and I love it too. I interview a woman who was really struggling in her marriage, really broken marriage, every week, who used the 6 intimacy skills and maybe the connection framework to make her marriage last and thrive. And she just comes on and tells us exactly how she did it, all the nitty gritty of the inside of the marriage. And it's the most inspiring thing. So inspires me, seems to be inspiring the audience too. And 1 million downloads just happened this week.
Congratulations. Yes, that means you're doing something really well.
It's pretty great. Yeah. Thank you.
So you have the same woman on for a series? And
I interview a new woman every week. Yeah, for about almost 2 years now.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I just subscribed, so I'm going to start listening. I saw that you have a Netflix episode or a Netflix series as well. So,
right. Yeah.
So you guys listening out, you've got a lot of places that you can connect with Laura, a lot of places where you can get some help.
That's right.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Lots
Okay, so let's dive into how to fix your relationship when he's checked out. I have gotten so many recently, it feels like more DMs, emails from women who are struggling in relationships and they feel like they're doing it all themselves. They're not sure if they need to get out. They're talking about issues like codependency. They're talking about some, abuse or verbal abuse that's going on, and just women who are in pain. And I've written articles before about fixing the relationship on your own. And I know that that is a little bit of your specialty, right?
Yes.
Right.
Well, Dr. Shaw, I love that is something that you are showing women too, that it's kind of amazing what women can do, right? We are the keepers of the relationship in my experience. So, so anyway, you and I are so on the same page. And I just love that, because I think that message gets diluted sometimes. But I know for me, it all starts with this really embarrassing story of being super happy when I first got married. I thought, oh, my husband is so smart and handsome and funny and talented. I've really got a good one. And then like a few years in, thinking, well, I'm going to show him how to be more ambitious, and I'll show him how to be a little cleaner, and he needs to be a little more romantic. So I'm going to just help him improve.
You're going to fix him.
I was going to fix him. Of course. And like, for some reason, he was like avoiding me. He was like watching like reruns like he would rather watch a rerun than even to make love to me. And I just
Mm,
thought, wow, this is, some things are really wrong.
yeah.
And I was kind of right there with what you're describing. A lot of women are saying, like, I just felt like I was the only person in the relationship. I was the only one working on it. I felt incredibly lonely. I was really overwhelmed. And it seemed really hopeless. But I thought, well, I know what to do. Everyone knows when you can't even have a conversation without getting into a fight, which is pretty much where we were. You gotta you drag him to marriage counseling. So that's what I did. I'm like, I'm gonna take him to marriage counseling. The counselor will fix him, and then I can finally be happy, because I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
That's how
And
it's supposed to work,
that's
right?
right, isn't it? That's how I wanted it to work. It
Yes.
didn't work, obviously. And I remember I was on the counselor's gray couch when I realized he's never going to change.
Mm.
And I'm either going to spend the rest of my life in a loveless marriage, or else I have to get divorced. So I decided that I would, I would get divorced.
What was it that made you think or know or finally come to that conclusion that he's never going to change?
Oh, because I think because we had just gone around and around and around so many times and
Yeah.
gotten into so many fights on the way home from the counselors. And um, we just were having the same conversations again and again with no progress. And so I made that decision, and there was just one problem, and that was that I was too embarrassed to get divorced, too
Mm-hmm.
proud.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't want to lose status like that.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, as a last ditch effort, I'm going to ask women who have happy marriages for at least 15 years. Does that seem like an eternity to me at the
How
time? Like,
long
I
had you
was
been
really,
married at that time?
oh, like 7, 8
Okay.
years, 9
Okay.
years, maybe. And I'm going to ask them for their secrets. And I thought they were going to say, like, you have to marry the right guy, you have to marry a good guy. They
Mhm.
didn't say that. The things they told me actually didn't even really make sense to me. Like, it was totally the opposite of everything I
Interesting.
thought about relationships. And what is interesting is my parents are divorced.
Uh-huh.
So there was a failed recipe that I had studied from, and I was repeating, and I was about to get the same result. So, but I thought I'm going to just experiment with some of their suggestions, because I was really desperate and I had nothing to lose at this point. Like, my marriage was just in the ditch. And so I remember I started just like, I thought, if it works, I'll keep it. If it doesn't, I'll throw it out. And I had been doing it not even that long when I came home one day, and as I walked through the door, my husband's face lit up.
Hmm.
He was happy
Wow.
to see me again. And that had been gone for a long time. So I thought, okay, something is working. Something is really making a difference here. And then I thought, okay, for sure, I'm going to be able to fix this marriage. Like, I got a lot of hope from that. And I'm like, we'll stop having these big fights, and we'll stop having these cold wars where there's no talking for days. Like, this is going to be great. And things were really pretty great for a while. And then I remember we were driving in the car, and we just had the biggest blowout again, just a big old huge fight. I was saying terrible things, he was saying terrible things back. It was,
Mm-hmm.
verbal abuse, whatever you want to say. And I thought, okay, like this isn't, I don't have all the pieces that I need.
Yeah.
And I decided that I knew that I knew what to do. And it was like, how tragic would this be now to end my marriage, now that I know what to do? And the new stuff, it wasn't that hard. It was new. And so
Okay.
I thought, I got this idea. I'm like, okay, if I could get a few of my girlfriends to do this with me, that have also been complaining about their husbands being checked out, then maybe it would stick. So I got like this little support group in my living room. There's 5 of us. And
Wow.
I just noticed, like, I remember, like, other women, I was saying, okay, try this, do this. And they were reporting miracles. Like, one woman, her husband won the sales contest at work and took him on the most romantic getaway of their lives. And another woman, she's like, maybe this isn't going to sound big to you guys. She goes, but we've been fighting for months about him painting the family room. I wanted the family room painted. She goes, he got up and just did it with a smile. So she's like,
Wow.
that's a miracle. Like, ooh,
We'll believe
So,
her.
right. Like, he wanted to make her happy again. So anyway, I knew, anyway, one of the women said, hey, can you write down what we're doing for my cousin in Florida? Because we were in California. I was like, sure, yeah, I'll write it down. And that became my first book, which went on to become a New York Times bestseller. It's in 19 languages and 30 countries. And we're celebrating our 20th year of the worldwide movement of women who practice the 6 intimacy skills to make their marriages last and thrive, become ridiculously happy wives.
Crazy,
It's
right?
crazy.
Crazy.
I
Yes.
just wanted to save my own marriage. Right?
Wow.
That's all I was
Okay,
trying to
so
do.
I know
So,
all the women out there are going, "What did you do? What are
yeah,
these
yeah.
skills?
I'm gonna tell them because
What are they?"
now I tell you what, I want every woman to get this information. I'm on a mission to end world divorce
Mm,
because now I look back, like my husband is just the love of my life. Like it would have been so tragic if I would have divorced this guy who is so handsome and smart and funny and talented. Like I thought when I married him, same guy, that guy came back. And that's who I live with now. We just celebrated 32 years of marriage in September. So
congratulations.
imagine if I had just walked away after 9,
Right.
right? I would have missed this wonderful ride that we've been on since then. So yeah, so I'm totally interested. Now, one of the things I've noticed is if I just go blah like this and say all the 6 intimacy skills, that doesn't, you're
It's
already
not the
shaking your
same.
head. You know what I'm going to
Mhm.
say, right?
Mhm.
But nevertheless, I would just like to at least give some kind of taste, right? Some things that maybe you could even experiment with and just see if it works for you or if it feels good to you to try some of the things that we've
And
learned.
before you start, I want to just highlight what you just said because I see so many women and men in my practice who have gotten divorced, right? Because of all the reasons why you were going to get divorced, remarry, have the same issues
It's
again. Right.
totally.
It's the same thing
Oh
and
yeah.
learn over the course of maybe, saving that marriage or ending that one too, that they could have made it work if they had done the same things in their first. Yes,
Yeah.
I hear that story in my office day after
Yeah.
day. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I would have just married the next handsome, smart, talented man, funny man, and been in the same boat because
Exactly.
I would have
Right.
just taken myself with me. And
There you go.
I
Yes.
had, oh, I mean, yeah, we didn't go into all the embarrassing details of the things that I was doing that was wrecking my marriage, but I'm sure we will as I go along. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a dance because we bring our history with us, we bring our triggers with us, we bring our wounds and things that we're trying to repair, right, into our marriages. But we also have to recognize that it bounces up against our spouses. And so it's really easy for us to feel like, well, it's just them because they made me. And part of the thing that I talk to women all the time is, my whole tagline is we're not fixing them, we're fixing you. And
Missing
that changes
you.
everything. Yes. Yes. And it's
Yes.
not that they're not doing the things, it's not that they're completely appropriate, right? It's just
Oh
that
yeah.
the reality is that when you respond differently, when you show up differently, you're going to get a different experience
A much
and
better
create a new
response.
one. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And without the same you can't be the same us. And then, you can be a much better us if you just make a few tweaks, really,
Yes.
that they actually feel so good. Like
Yeah.
I like myself so much better and I have so much more confidence. And now that I have these new practices that I didn't learn them growing up. My mom didn't know. She would have told me, I'm sure. I don't think
Of
my
course
grandmas
you would
knew.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, they would have told me. And
Right.
so now, yeah, I feel so passionate about making sure every woman at least gets the right information into her hands to start experimenting with. And then you're always the expert on your own life, to decide which things you're going to try in your marriage or
Mhm.
that fit for you or don't. And so that's kind of the way we operate. Like, here's some experiments. Why don't you give them a shot? And that's where the fun can start. Because I mean, one of the things I enjoy about using the 6 intimacy skills is I just remember my husband's head exploding. Like in the beginning when I would just change it up, he was like, he would like
Who are
start.
you?
He's like, yeah, exactly. He like walking to the screen door, like, what just happened? So it can be kind of fun.
Okay, so let's dive into these. Tell
Sure.
me about some of those
Well,
intimacy skills.
I'm going to start with one of my favorite ones, even though
Mhm.
I would say it's kind of an advanced skill in a way. Like there's other ones I want you to start with, but this one, it's just so magical. I can't shut up about it. And it's called the spouse fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, yes, I wanted to ask about that. Mhm.
Okay.
What does
Yeah.
that
So,
mean?
well, it falls under it's a gratitude skill. It's a gratitude
Mm.
skill. This is the art of counting your blessings instead of counting your curses. And I'll tell you the way I learned about it was from Lee Miltier, who is she's a speaker, and I heard like it was probably like a cassette tape. It was that long ago. I was listening to her, and she was talking about how she taught a course on autosuggestion. And
Mm.
autosuggestion is when you say things to yourself that you want to be so. So you're just trying
Mhm.
to adjust your brain to be focused on that
Right.
I ran a marathon or I have a successful business or whatever it is you want to be so. And one of Lee's students went to her course and she walked away realizing that she had been auto suggesting things to her husband that were not what she wanted to experience.
Exactly. Yes.
She was auto suggesting to him that he always loses his temper. He has bad temper. Why don't you
Mhm.
try to control your temper? Right? She had that going on. So she left Lee's course and she thought, I'm going to change this up. What can it hurt? I'm going to experiment. I'm going to start saying, it's not like you to lose your temper.
Mm.
So she went home and she waited for him to lose his temper, and she didn't have to wait very long. And then she said, that's not like you to lose your temper. And he looked at her funny, like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? And their 12-year-old son said, yes, it is, Mom. He always loses his temper.
Right.
Right? Because what had he been listening to?
Yes.
So, but she thought, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to stick with this because
Good.
this is not what I want to experience. So I'm going to
Mhm.
focus on this other experience I want to have. So she kept doing it, and they were out to eat not long after that. And the service was slow. And the husband started to fume. He was like, I have a good mind to call the manager over here, let him know how long I've been waiting. And then he stopped himself and he looked at her and he goes, that's not like me to lose my temper like that, is it?
Wow.
And she just about fell out of the
Mhm.
chair.
Mhm.
And I heard this and I had just what you were talking about, Dr. Shaw, when you said we all come with our own childhood stuff, our
Mhm.
baggage,
Mhm.
whatever. I had what I call it a subscription to Fear of Financial Insecurity
Mhm.
daily. And I used to read it like several times a day, right? So this was part of my baggage. And so one of the ways it manifested in my marriage is I would say to my husband, why don't you see if you can, why don't you ask for a raise? Why don't you see if you can make a little more money? Why don't you try to get a promotion? Why don't you try to get a better
Mhm.
job? Right. And of course, all he heard, and rightly so, was you don't make enough money.
You're not good enough.
You're not good
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
and you don't make enough money. And
Right.
so I'm such a good manifester that my husband quit his job. He was making no money because that's just how powerful I am, right?
Wow.
Not just
Yes.
me, all of us, right?
That's how
But
powerful your words
how
are.
powerful my
Yes.
words are,
Yes.
right? And so I was so resentful. I was seething. I just couldn't believe he would just quit his job. He was making no money. But I thought, you know what? I'm wanting to have a different experience. I'm going to use this thing I heard Lee Miltier talk about. And so I decided I was going to say, you're such a good, you've always been a good provider. You're a good provider. And just for fun, I thought I'm going to start calling him Mr. Moneybags just because that's, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
So around that time,
Yeah.
my husband started his own company. He'd never done that before. And it was very successful. It was more successful than he'd been at any of his previous jobs. And he loved the work and he was good at it. And he had it for like 20 years. So, and it was not a stretch at all to say you're such a good provider. And then
Right.
he'd get a check in the mail and I'd say, oh, look, Mr. Moneybags got a check in the mail. You can take me
Oh,
to sushi tonight. And he was like, all
yeah.
right, let's do. So it was just really interesting. So now, so fast forward 20 years later, and I have had tens of thousands of students use this, and we see it just work. I had one student who, her negative spouse fulfilling prophecy was, you never want to spend time with me. And she
Mm.
would say that to him when they were fighting, like, you never want to spend time with me. And she decided to just switch it up. And she was going to say, I know you want to spend time with me. I know you want to. And that felt like a bold-faced lie, but we
Right.
just decided she was going to experiment with changing her focus, right? You can find the evidence for things
Mhm.
if you are focused on them.
Right.
So then after we came up with that, the next Saturday, she woke up and she thought, oh, we're going to spend the day together. This is going to be great. And then his friend called and said, hey, let's go mountain biking. And he's like, right on, let's go mountain biking today. And so he told her, I'm going to go mountain biking with Joe or whatever, Steve, whoever it was. And and she got so upset and she just reverted right back to the
Uh,
old pattern, right? Like,
yeah.
you never want to spend time with me. And she stormed off. And then she thought about things and she realized, like, oh yeah, I was going to use that
I was supposed
new.
to do
Yeah, I
that.
was supposed to say, I know you want to spend time with me. So she went back in and she said, I'm sorry I got so upset. She goes, I know you want to spend time with me. And then she left again. So 5 minutes later, he comes into the room and he goes, I told Joe or Steve, whoever it was, that I can't go mountain biking today. And she looked at him like, you did? Why? And he goes,
Mhm.
I want to spend time with you. They went antiquing. Antiquing, Dr. Shaw,
Wow.
antiquing. No man wants to
Wow.
go antiquing.
Right.
Okay, so he wanted to spend time with her. So we see this work in a variety of capacities. And I think the hardest part, the most challenging part, and why I ended up having to create this connection framework
Mhm.
that I used. Remember, I had that support group in my living room.
Right.
Is because when you're trying to do this stuff alone, it's a little tricky because
Of course.
you feel like you're defying reality. But my experience is that reality is a little squishy. And like my husband went from, smart, handsome, talented, funny to Mr. Loser Pants, and
Mhm.
then back to smart, handsome, talented, funny,
Mhm.
based
Mhm.
on what I decided to focus on.
That that is phenomenal. And I can understand the power of it because I talk so much about self-talk, right? I'm always preaching, you guys listening, I'm always talking about self-talk. I've done a course on self-talk. I don't know that I've ever talked about spouse talk. And I know how powerful our words are. They can transform our life. They are the vehicle through which, everything that happens in our life, it starts with our words, right?
It does. It
And so I
really
know how
does.
powerful it is individually. And I had not really thought much about how powerful it is, the words that we speak to. I think about it with our kids, but I don't think about it
Yeah.
so much with our spouse. So I know how powerful that can be. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is such a fun one. It feels indistinguishable from magic because it
Yeah.
becomes so powerful when you choose those words thoughtfully and wisely.
And I love that you said that somebody who you were talking to said that, it feels like a bold-faced lie.
Yes.
Because I talk to, my clients and my audience about the fact that when we change our self-talk to something positive and affirming, it does feel like we're lying to ourselves. And
It
many
does.
women will say like, well, I don't want to lie to myself.
That's
And
right.
I often ask them, they're on this high horse. We don't want to do that. But I ask them, but you tell yourself you're ugly. You tell yourself you're stupid. You make all of those bold global statements that we know are not true.
That's
And
right.
you never question those. You're not like, well, I'm
No,
not going to say that to
no,
myself because I'm not going to lie. And we
that's
do the same
right.
thing to our spouses. We make
Oh, we
global
do.
statements
We
that are not
do.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the conversations we have around that is how like we use like always and never, right, with
Yes.
our spouses, right? Like, you're
Right.
always late, you never listen to me, right? And that's
Mhm.
just totally not true because nobody can even always or never do something, right? It's just not
True.
possible.
Right.
So it's like, well, you sometimes, right, you sometimes don't listen, means that sometimes you do listen, right? So
Exactly.
you
Yes.
get to pick which one you're going to focus on here. And we talk about like catching your husband doing something good,
Yes.
to like really
Uh-huh.
finding that evidence. It's like, my husband's, he's such a slob, the house is such a mess. Like, well, does he ever take his plate to the sink? You could catch him, and then you could say like, you are so tidy. I did this one too with my husband's often. I mean, it's crazy all the things you can accomplish with I remember saying to him like, oh, I noticed your office is a lot tidier, because he'd cleaned off his desk because the cleaning people were going to come. So I was like, oh, it looks a lot tidier. And do you know, and it had been really so full, you could barely walk through his office. I couldn't sit on the chairs in his office. There was
Yeah.
stuff on him. And I just kind of kept with it. I was just like going to affirm him that it was so tidy in there. And he took everything out of his office, threw a bunch of stuff away, bought new furniture. And that was years ago. And to this day, his office is really tidy. There's nothing on the floor. I can sit on the chair. Like, it's crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, that really is a special kind of magic. And so I also know that a woman listening who is in the midst of a very difficult relationship, who is struggling in her marriage, is thinking, that's not going to work for me. I've tried to be
That's
nice to my
right.
husband. I've said some nice things to him, and all he does is speak meanly to me, and
That's
that's not
right.
going to work. What
That's
do you
exactly
say?
right.
What do you say to that woman?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I say, I just remember how hard that was. I remember how
Mhm.
lonely and how sad and scary it
Mhm.
was to be in that marriage, because I was there for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was kind of astonishing to me that I learned from those women that I interviewed was about this concept of respect. And I knew that I should be respectful. I heard that growing up,
Mhm.
wives
Mhm.
respect your husbands.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I was like, I totally respect my husband except for the way he dresses, the way he drives, and he's kind of messy. And so I didn't really understand it. And
Yeah.
even now I've been doing this work for 20 years, and I write blogs and have podcasts about it and stuff. Sometimes I'll be describing what my understanding of respect is to men, and I'll be like, that is just so weird. Like my feminine brain's like, that can't be true, is it? But it's such a different
Mhm.
thing. And so what I've come to understand is that all the times that I was being helpful to my husband, or a devil's advocate, or like he was, saying something about work, and I was saying, but have you thought about this or whatever?
Mhm.
I was like questioning his competence. That's how it came off to
Right.
him. I
Yeah.
think I'm being helpful, trying to tell him how to solve a problem, how to handle somebody at work. To him, it comes off as you don't know what you're doing. And it's like the
Mhm.
most disrespectful thing. Even when I went to marriage counseling and we got on that couch and I started telling a stranger in front of my husband everything that was wrong with my husband, that was like the most disrespectful thing in the world. Like
Mm.
I dug my hole deeper. And so my husband wants to know that I think he's competent and smart. And anytime I'm questioning that, it's like it's a wound right to his heart. And he seems like such a big, strong man. Like, why should that hurt so much? But it really did. And when I became clear on that, it just became really important to me to learn how to be. I wanted to be a respectful wife. I really did. I wanted to show up. I didn't want to be disrespectful. That's not anything I would aspire to, but I
Mhm.
just didn't know what it looked like or how to do it. So I ended up coming up with some cheap phrases
Hmm.
that I rely on quite heavily. In fact, one of my students actually she was the chief financial officer of a large private school. And so she managed, like a $40 million budget at work or whatever. And then she was trying to do the same at home, right?
Mm.
Help her husband, you know, save money and not spend too much and all that, because she was really good at it at work. But her marriage was in big trouble. They'd been sleeping in separate beds for 6 months. Her husband was definitely checked out. She'd see him on the couch with the dog, petting the dog, but she couldn't. There was
Yeah.
nothing for her,
Right.
and she was heartbroken. And she got a hold of the intimacy skills, and she decided to experiment. And so the very first conversation they had, he said to her, I need you to tell me what you want me to do with this cell phone plan. We need a new cell phone plan. And so she used this cheap phrase, and it's whatever you think. She said, "Oh, whatever you think, Doug." And then Doug looked at Kathy, and he was like, "No, you got to tell me what you want me to do here," because he didn't want to get in trouble later for
Right.
doing it wrong. And she just decided to stick with it. She said, no, whatever you think, I trust you. She added,
Mm.
I trust you. Now, deep down, see, Doug knew that she was telling him what to do because she thought he would mess it up. Right. And she was
Right.
afraid he was going to mess it up.
Deep down, she didn't trust him.
She didn't trust
Right.
him,
She
but
didn't.
she decided to use those words. That's
Mhm.
that cheap phrase, whatever you
Mhm.
think, I'm going to defer to your thinking and I trust you. So Doug went away and made the decision on the cell phone plan. She thought he would probably mess it up, but he did fine.
Mm.
And that night he came to her and said, "You were so nice today." And tears just rolled down her cheeks. And they slept in the same bed that very night.
Wow. Yeah.
And she'd been going to counseling for an hour a week by herself for 6 months before that, just complaining about her husband.
Mhm.
And no one ever got happier that way, by the way. You never get happier by complaining about your husband for an hour a week. I promise. It doesn't. It seems tempting, but it just doesn't work. So the next day, she fired her counselor, and she ended up coming to train with me. So that was 20 years ago, and she still gets tears in her eyes now when she talks about how wonderful her husband is.
Wow.
Once she learned this concept of respect and to stop bringing that uh, disrespect into the relationship in a way that was causing him to distance himself. because when we're prickly, when I was a porcupine wife, my husband just wanted to keep his distance.
Right.
And we see that happen again and again. So the first place to check, and especially if physical intimacy is missing, is let's take a look at the respect piece and how that's going. And there's so much you can do. It's kind of
Yeah.
magical.
I love that because, you know, we can train the competence out of our husbands.
Oh, completely.
And we do that well
Completely.
with our words. And it's unfortunate because I know it does become, a vicious cycle, but we feel like sometimes we can do it better. We can do it faster,
Oh,
more efficient,
totally.
and it's easier to just do it
Absolutely.
ourselves than to ask. And then we do that. We heap more and more on ourselves. More bitterness goes towards our husband, and they take the
Yeah,
role. They're like, well,
that's
if that's
right.
the role you're giving me, that's the role I'm going to take. And it just becomes this strong, hold in a marriage. What you were talking about, respect and communication, is what I'm hearing is, one of the things that you can do, I think, with that is ask yourself, what is he hearing? Because often, you'll make a comment that's just helpful and you can go, well, I was just trying to help, right? But what you have to ask yourself, well, remember that communication, when it comes to communication, it doesn't matter really what you say to the other person. The only thing that matters is what they hear, right? And so we'll get so caught up in, well, I didn't mean it. And that's not, what I was doing. And none of that matters. You have to ask yourself, what is he hearing?
That's right.
The bigger picture. And if it's not positive, if it's not really getting across, if it's not really helpful, then you need to not do it.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
true. And sometimes I know for me, fish are always the last to discover they're swimming in the ocean, right? And
Absolutely.
okay, here's one thing I got from the counselor. I remember one time we are there and she said, I don't know if you realize you're kind of controlling. And I was like, what? Me? We're here to
Yes.
fix him. Like, what
Yes.
are you talking about? Right. So, and then I was like, okay, I'm controlling. Okay, now what do I do? And she was like, I don't know, got nothing. So I think she was a little controlling herself. But anyway, so what I have come to see since then, though, is when I'm being helpful, a lot of times it's control. I'm afraid.
Mhm.
That's what's underneath the control. Let's face it. I'm
Fear.
afraid. I don't have to tell them to, like, be sure to bring the coupon to the store. Don't buy a sports car for a family of four, or I don't forget to pick up the kids, or or whatever it is, right? Like, I don't have to, if I'm not afraid, I don't have to tell them, hey, better stay off the freeway during rush hour. We'll never get there in time, right?
Mhm.
I can be trusting when it's easy to be trusting if you're not afraid. It's when the fear comes up that
Right.
I get to
Right.
kind of make my own decision as a woman, as a wife. How do I want to? What do I want to pay attention to? Am I going to go running down the dark alley with my fear, or am I going to choose my faith that I married a competent guy, I married a smart guy here, and just
Mhm.
trust him to, and maybe even as part of that, let him have life lessons instead of wife lessons.
Exactly. Yes. Let him work it out
Let
and
him work
trust
it
that he'll
out.
figure it out. And it's
Yeah.
actually better. You talked about how you feel better, right?
Oh, I
When
feel
you're
so
not
much
micromanaging everything and
better.
you let someone do it, even if it's not exactly the way you would do it, it gets
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
It's done and
You
it
know what?
feels good.
That's right. There
Yeah.
was this critical piece, another critical piece that I was totally missing, did not learn growing up. And I think a lot of women struggle with it. And, um, and there's this embarrassing story where my husband he took us on a romantic getaway to Hawaii,
Mhm.
very early on in our relationship. And I was super excited because the first day I thought, oh, we're going to go to the beach. I can't wait to go to the beach. But instead of saying that I want to go to the beach, I said, hey, what do you want to do today? And he said, well, let's go see a volcano. I was like, oh, volcano. Oh my God. Like, I do
Yeah.
not want to go see a volcano. But I thought, I'm just gonna suck it up because I don't want to have a conflict. I just
Mhm.
want to be close. I just want to be close.
Mm.
And so I didn't say what I wanted. And I get kind of sad when I think about that younger version of me, because if you can't ever say what you want, you're never going to get what you want. So we're driving in the rental car on our way to the volcano, but you don't see a volcano for a long time. You just see like little molten rocks on the side of the road, pretty much. And I was just getting upset because we weren't doing what I wanted. And he said, is something wrong? The $1 million question. And that's when I went like, did you think this would be fun because I don't think it's fun at all. I think it's stupid and I want to go to the beach and you didn't even ask me what I wanted to do.
Right.
So he saw a volcano, all right. Um, and even after I behaved so badly, he took me to the beach.
Mm,
Took me to the beach because he just wanted me to be happy. That's how men are wired. So husbands are wired. They just want their wives to be happy.
it is
But they
true.
need to know how to make us happy. So I think a lot of times when we start talking about the respect piece, I immediately just want to jump in with, there's also a formula for how to express your desires in a way that inspires him.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I think we thought we did it and we didn't do it.
We didn't.
So
Yeah.
one of the ones I used to really fail at was I would say, John, this kitchen is a disaster area. And I thought he would just jump off of the couch and like start doing the dishes, but he never did. He couldn't really hear what I wanted because I wasn't saying
Right.
it. I think he probably heard, John, blah, 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 or whatever,
Exactly.
like nothing. Yeah. So finally one day I said, John, I would love a clean kitchen. And I
Mm,
didn't say who should clean it or how it should be cleaned. I just said what I would love, the final outcome. And he's like, okay, I'll clean it. He got up and started cleaning the kitchen. That was 20 years ago. He's been cleaning it ever since. I don't do any dishes at my house, Dr. Shaw,
wow.
because he knows that makes me happy that he does it. Just today, I was like, wow, this kitchen's so clean. Thank you so much. So,
And sometimes you have to get even more specific than that because the concept of a clean kitchen for one person is different than another. But I think that the beauty of what you said, and we're talking about respecting our husbands, but in the process, we also have to respect ourselves.
that's
And when
right.
we're not willing
That's
to
right.
speak the truth, when we're too scared and not willing to say the things that we need, we hurt us, we hurt
Yeah.
our marriage, and that is disrespectful.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
when it comes to speaking what you need, you also have to recognize that you know what you need.
Oh, yeah. It's
But
incumbent on you to know what
it
you want.
is.
Yes.
And you have to be able to say it in a way that he can hear. So if you say something like, I want to feel like you love me, or I want attention, that means nothing. And so
That's
you
right.
might, because women will say, I told him I want more attention, or I told him I want to be loved,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, no, you didn't.
No,
You didn't tell
no,
him that when
no.
you do this, when you put gas in my car, I feel loved.
That's
When you
right.
do the
That's making them do
dishes,
something
I
good.
feel cared for.
Yeah.
They need to know the things. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that I often hear is someone will say, well, if I have to tell him what I want, then he's only doing it because I asked. And it doesn't count somehow,
So,
right?
yeah.
It doesn't count. He has to kind of
Yeah.
know. He's supposed to
Yeah,
read
he's
my
supposed to
mind
read
and
my
just love me
mind.
and know.
Oh,
No, if you tell him
yeah.
what you want and he does it, it's because he loves you. That's his expression of love towards you. So those are hangups
Yeah.
that I notice a lot of women will get into, this whole concept of he should know.
It's super
No.
common. And I
Yeah.
know for me, I used to spend a lot of time telling my husband to be more affectionate or
Mm,
pay more attention. And it always felt pretty bad because if I was saying like, I want you to just pay attention to me, it kind of meant that he didn't want to, right? Like
mhm.
I wanted something beyond just, I tell you to pay attention to me and you do, because
Right.
I wanted to feel desired. Like I thought that
Ah,
was really important to
yeah.
feel, I just wanted to feel desired. So, anyway, so it's not something I would ever do now. I would never, um, yeah, ask for his time or his attention or his affection because I just noticed like when we were first falling in love, I never needed to ask for any of that. Like
Right. Right.
he couldn't get enough of me, right?
Right.
And when I use the 6 intimacy skills, when I practice that, which just like your tagline, I changed me. I didn't change him, right?
Exactly.
But when
Yeah.
I went back to being the way I was in a lot of ways when we were falling in love, the man who wooed me came back and he
Mhm.
he can't get enough of me. I'll be like working on my laptop and he just comes and sits right next to me. Like I'm not going to pay attention to him even. He's just like he just wants to be
Yeah.
right next to me, or I catch him taking pictures. He'll take pictures and I was brushing crumbs off the island counter and he's like, "Oh, stop. I'm going to take your picture." Like I'm a supermodel that he's been married to for 32
Oh,
years, right? So
yes.
you can become an irresistible magnet
Mhm.
again. Like he was attracted to you before and he will be again as some of these other things are cleared up, like if there's disrespect or some of the other common things that we see. There's only 6 things, there's only 6 skills you got to worry about. But
Beautiful.
it's it's just really nice to attract him naturally and not have to say, why don't you pay attention to me?
I need. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I
So
definitely don't
can
want to do that.
you can you
Feels
share
dumb.
with a woman what are the red flags where you shouldn't really be applying these things in your relationship, or maybe it's not salvageable?
Yeah. This is another embarrassing story. So, when I wrote my first book 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I said, because I was scared that, gosh, if he cheats on you, if he's a cheater, if he's physically abusive, or if he's like addicted to drugs or alcohol or gambling, then you should get out. And one of the ones I left out was, I left out verbal abuse. And the reason I left it out is because I had the experience of a lot of verbal abuse flying around.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was on my side too, let's be honest, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there was verbal abuse at my house, totally cleared up. So I'm like, that one I'm not worried about. That one I know we can just get around that. It's gonna be fine. You just, you can restore the peace in your home. So that's why I wrote my first book. Like, if you have one of these three, nothing you can do. You've got to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I ended up having to write a big mea culpa because so many women were like, "Well, I'm married to an alcoholic, but I also have these three kids, and I don't want to break up my family." So I
Mm-hmm.
decided to use the skills, and they used the skills. And I just interviewed a husband of a student recently who's 18 months sober. 18
Wow.
months sober. He goes, "Oh, I give all the credit to what my wife did." Like it was unbelievable. I have a coach who had a restraining order against her husband, a restraining order.
Mm-hmm.
And she is now proudly sharing about her wonderful marriage that she's transformed and helping other women do the same. Um, we certainly have seen so many women with affairs, multiple affairs also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have coaches who have that story. And just so many women on the campus have shared that as well. So it turns out, Dr. Shah, I was afraid. I knew people would get mad at me for saying that
Mm-hmm.
you should try to stay in and fight for your marriage with those things. It's like everyone knows you should get out if those things are happening. But no, each wife is the expert on her own relationship. Safety comes first. Always
Absolutely.
safety
Yeah.
comes first. And if you're not safe, you've got to get safe.
And I've talked to women about the difference between divorce and separating. And sometimes you need to separate for safety. It doesn't necessarily mean that a divorce is ensuing. That's something to be determined, right? What happens during that separation. But maybe those kinds of things fall in that gap of, if you need to separate for safety reasons, then maybe apply some of these skills and see what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because even so much of I guess one of the things I feel I've learned is so much of my safety comes from inside of me. That
Mm-hmm.
if I'm reacting and seeing like danger and fear and
Oh,
bad
that's
things can
true.
happen,
Yes.
that I can really escalate a situation that
Right.
maybe would have
Wouldn't
been
have.
fine. I just had and now I use the skills everywhere I go now. I use them in grocery stores and with contractors and with everybody. And it's just interesting how a situation where you think, oh no, this can't be happening. And you can really choose your faith over your fear in that situation. Like seeing that other person as somebody who just wants the best for you too. Like they want to help you. They want to support you. And just how you treat them differently when you're seeing that in them versus it's like, oh my God, they're trying to rip me off, or
Yes.
how whatever fear comes
Yes.
up, right? So I see it with myself again and again, and I've seen it with these incredibly courageous women who had marriages where anybody in authority would say, "Oh, I'm scared for you. I think you should leave,"
Mhm.
and she's very wisely saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna save my family. I'm gonna fix my
Mhm.
family." But
Mhm.
something deep down in me knows this is fixable, and
Mm.
I just need the support. I need somebody to stand for me instead of saying, "Yeah, you got to get out. You deserve better."
Right.
Leave him. That was a very common
Right.
advice you hear all over the place now,
Of
right?
course,
And
right. For
um,
very little things even
for
these
it
days,
can be
yes.
very little things and it can be big
Right.
things.
Mhm.
And the point is nobody knows what's right for her
But
except for
it's
that
true.
wife.
It's
She's the
very
only one
true.
that knows. And if she's there raising her hand, like, I want to fix this, then I'm going to stand for her. I'm going to get behind that with
Mm.
all my might, make sure that she gets all the support that she needs to do that.
So let's talk about some of that support because while a woman is in the midst of changing, even maybe something such as, dysfunctional as we were just talking about, how can she take care of herself while she's waiting
Yeah.
for some change to happen?
Well, I think it's interesting you'd ask that because I remember I was saying there's other skills that you have to do before you get to these. Some of the
Mhm.
ones we've talked about: spouse fulfilling prophecy and respect.
Mhm.
The number one skill when you come to our campus, the very first thing we ask you to do, and most women go, yeah, 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 but what can I do to fix my marriage?
Yeah.
And it's something you're an expert on, Dr. Shaw, and that is it's self-care. It's
Yes.
self-care. And
Mhm.
my definition of that, because
Hmm.
I used to get kind of frustrated because I feel like, how do I care for, what is self-care really? How do I know if I
Yeah.
did it, right? Or if I didn't do it? And so my definition of that is so we ask women to make a list of 20 activities or
Mhm.
non-activities like naps that bring her joy. And I'm looking for frivolous fun. I'm
Mhm.
looking for
Mhm.
delight. I'm not just
Yes.
looking for 5 fruits and vegetables and 30 minutes of
Right.
cardio or whatever, like things that we feel like we should do,
Yeah.
but maybe are kind of more like check marks on a to-do
Maintenance.
list. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'm looking for, like, I have this one student who was saying she loved twirling a baton in high school and she's in her 40s now. So she got her baton out and she was like twirling it in the garage to her favorite, loud music or whatever. And
Mm.
her husband recently bought her the right size baton that fits her arm because he saw how much joy she was finding with it. So it could be standing up paddleboarding. I love to play volleyball, so I play as much of that as I can. And so everybody's got their own
That's great.
individual list. And the
Yeah.
way to know if you're doing it is you do at least 3 things a day for your own happiness. At least 3.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so and if you're not able to find the time for that, or if you have forgotten, and this is really common, women arrive on our campus and they're really sad because they don't know anymore. They're like, I'm
Mhm.
busy. I've been taking care of my kids. I've been taking care of my husband.
Mhm.
I've been going to my job. I've been running the house, paying the bills, and I forget. I don't know. I don't know
Yes.
anymore. And then it's just this process, it's this unfolding of like, oh, I got out the easel and the paints, and oh my gosh, I'm having the most fun. And as I'm doing this, also, oh my gosh, my husband can't get enough of me. He loves this goddess of fun and light that emerges as he sees you smiling and laughing and dancing and
Right.
singing again.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, that speaks to so many things about attraction and, oh, I'm not going to go deep into that, but no, that's great. It's interesting because as you were talking about that, I do this homeschool co-op with my youngest daughter, and each week a family gets up and does a presentation. And one of the moms, she's an amazing mom. She's got 4 kids, and the whole presentation is about, family and what they like to do as a family, what the kids like. And after the presentation, the kids get to ask questions. And one of the girls raised her hand and she said, "What do you like to do? Just yourself?" And the mom was like, "Me?" And she didn't have an answer. She's like, "Oh, well," she wasn't able to answer the question. And it hit me so hard. And of course, all the moms kind of laugh, like, "What's that? We don't know what that is ourselves," but it just struck me that so many
So
women are in
big.
that place and it just became kind of a joke. But that little girl asked, she noticed that all of it was about
So
them.
smart.
Yeah,
Imagine if she had said, "Oh, me, I love to twirl my baton in the garage with loud
right,
music," right? Like,
right.
I mean,
But
it
she
was
had
just,
forgotten.
she'd
Yeah.
forgotten. I mean, and that's just one, kind of outlier example. I don't know
Mhm.
that many women that like to twirl a baton,
Right.
but I love that example because it's so specific
It
to
is.
her. Like, she really got in touch with herself and said, "How do I feel? What do I
Yeah.
want?" And she let herself
Right.
have it. And it's such a beautiful, inspiring thing. And you're right. Like, that mom she's not unusual. She's the
No.
norm because
Right.
it's part of motherhood to, I was thinking the metaphor of how like your body will give the nutrients to the baby instead of
Before.
to your own self, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of like
Yes.
the energy goes the same way.
Yeah.
But really, what better thing to do as a mom than to fill yourself up so you're showing up
Hmm.
as that happy, fulfilled mom that's a role
Right.
model and has resources to give, right, to those kids and to her family.
And that's
Yeah.
attractive.
And that's
And
attractive
it's attractive.
and kind of expands your time. I remember one of my students said that. She was like, I don't have time to do self-care. And then
Mm.
she decided after she sent her kids to school in the morning, she was going to watch, she only had 15 minutes. She was going to watch 15 minutes of a movie every day. So it would take her like several days to watch this
Oh,
movie. I know.
yeah.
But she said it really made a difference because that was just her little time that she'd watch a little bit of the
Yeah.
movie. And she, at the end of like 2 weeks, I was like, well, how's it going with self-care? And she goes, it's expanded my time. And I was like, what do you
Mhm.
mean? She goes, well, I still have, I'm getting done everything that I was supposed to do. And I still have all my responsibilities, but I'm also getting this time for myself too. So that's my explanation. My time expanded.
Yeah. And it's more enjoyable when you're doing the other things, when you know that you've filled yourself up a bit.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this conversation. I know
Thank you.
that women need to hear it, and I love the work that you're doing. How can women find you, get to you, your
Well,
stuff?
I have something really fun going on right now, which is the Adored Wife Roadmap. So you can download that PDF for free. It has the 3 mistakes that women make trying to get their husband's time, attention, and
Mm,
affection. And it also just really lays out the 6 steps to becoming an adored wife, an empowered wife, a ridiculously happy wife. So you can get that at lauradoyle.org, lauradoyle.org. And then the other way you can listen in on the success stories of women who've been in these really heart-wrenching situations with
mm,
detached spouses, is that I interview them on the podcast and they share the exact steps that they took to revitalize those relationships, to make them fun and playful and passionate again, make them
wonderful.
last.
So I look forward to checking out your podcasts in my queue now.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Shaw. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on, Laura.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Take care.